Annyeonghaseyo, goeiedag, goedemiddag, good evening, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tenki101, and we are going to be talking about my November reads by doing a November wrap-up for this month. I am trying to wake up, I'm trying to get my day started with a cup of coffee. So grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's sit down and let's chat about some books, because I'm ready. Yeah. So I had a little challenge for myself that I set for November that I wanted to read Korean books. I wanted to read more Korean authors because I read Japanese authors before. I've read some South African authors, I've read American, and I've read British, and some other authors from around the world, but I have never read a Korean book. So I set out for myself to read 4 books, and I was able to finish 2 of the thinner ones because Pachinko scares me. I'm not sure why, but just that book scares me. It feels like I'm not ready for what that book is going to do to me. I don't feel like I'm cool enough to read Pachinko, so I did not read Pachinko. But we'll get there. One day Pachinko will be our lucky winner for our reading adventures, I guess. This is also my 3rd time trying to film this video, so let's hope that this time it goes well and that I can actually finish this video. So, first up, the first book I finished was 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. This was an interesting book. This was a book I read, and a book that I enjoyed at times. That's why I only gave this book 2 stars, because I don't think it's poorly written. I don't think that Murakami cannot write. It's just there was some inconsistencies in the book that I found a little bit odd. That might just be my personal taste in a book. Maybe I just didn't jive with his writing style, but I did find it interesting, and I do find him interesting. I understand now why people complain about how he writes women, because there were choices made in this book about his female characters that I didn't quite understand why he would choose to do that. But this basically follows 2 main protagonists. I'm not sure if they're going to meet. I'm not sure if they're going to meet, or I'm not sure when they're going to meet, but I want them to meet. I really want them to meet, and I'm trying my best not to give any spoilers. So that's one of the things, like, is this going to be a love story between the 2 protagonists? Because I'm not sure how exactly that's going to happen by reading the book. But then again, I do have part 2 and part 3 still to go, so a lot can happen in the remaining... How many pages? In the remaining, like, 500-600 pages of the books, the 2 books, because he decided to do a 1,000-page book. But this follows a male author who got dragged into this dodgy deal of rewriting a draft for a book that was part of a contest to make sure that that book gets chosen to be the winner. And then things unfold from there. And then our second protagonist is female, and she is an assassin. Who doesn't want a female assassin? I don't, because I don't want to die. But the female assassin assassinates people that are douchebags, people that use and abuse people, use and abuse their money in society, and she just goes and she just and kills them. And we love her for it. Thank you for doing a good thing for society. But of course, these 2 characters need to get tangled into the same story, the same web. And they do kind of, in a way, which I'm still trying to figure out. But I don't think this is badly written. I just think one of the things that bothered me is the way he wrote the female sexual identity and how we would put emphasis and describe the female body, but when we get to the male body, the male sexuality, it is just left up to your imagination. And I kind of had a problem with that. Like, I do understand where it is over-sexualizing women, and it's not a fun thing to experience that. And I know he gets a lot of flack for that. But it didn't take away too much from the story. It added an extra element for the female character in her character development and understanding her as a person. But then the man not getting that, you're taking away from that character. That character is then not as rounded and not as explored as the female character. So you're doing a disservice to your own book, actually, by being weird about the female body and the female sexual identity. But anyway, wasn't too bad. Maybe I will give it a higher rating later on if I read book 2 and book 3. Hopefully, if I read book 2 and book 3. Book 2 will be forever on my TBR, as I said in my previous video. So maybe in one of my reading wrap-ups, we will get to see part 2. And maybe it will get a higher rating than 2. But I just gave it a 2 because nearing the end of the book, I was suffering. I was suffering through the book to the ending. I was like pushing to get to the end because I was like, man, you write a lot. And you write slow. Your pacing is slow. But sometimes your pacing is so good. And then sometimes your pacing just goes a little bit slow. But yeah. The next book I decided to take on was Love in the Big City. Written by Sang-Young Park and translated by Anton Her. Congratulations to the translation. I think the translation was very, very well done. It was such a quick read, such an easy read. I think I read this in a day. It's a short book. Just over 200 pages. But Love in the Big City is a queer story, a little bit of gay love, gay experience in the big city in Seoul. And I did really, really enjoy it. One of my friends did not enjoy it because he said he read like short stories, which I do actually have to agree. That's the one thing that they don't tell you, is that this book is segmented into different characters that our main character meets, and then it does kind of read like just short stories from his life. There isn't like a cohesive flow in the story because there's like time jumps that happen between the men and women that our character meets and interacts with for various reasons. Unfortunately, the story didn't have such a happy ending. It is a quick read and it's an easy read. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed how quick it was. I enjoyed the character's journey. It was nice to identify with some of the things on a personal level. And it's a book that I will easily recommend to people to actually pick up if they want a quick read. But I did feel a little bit disappointed at the end that it wasn't what I expected it was. But that's, I think, more on me and not really the book itself. So if you want a little adventure of a gay man in Seoul in Korea, pick up Love in the Big City. It is worth the read, and if you're a fast-ish reader, you will devour it in a few hours. It took me a day with frequent pauses. I think the character development was well done. Of course, it is based kind of on real life. I think this is partly based on real life and partly fiction, and I overall had a good time with it. And after finishing this, because I was like, look at me reading fast, yeah, I finished in a day, I decided to cheat myself and not read another Korean book, but have my friends and family choose a book for me. And boy, oh boy, that was an adventure that we went on. And the adventure we went on was by one of the authors that I have been so excited to read, and that was N.K. Jemisin, The City We Became. And I have been waiting to read a book by N.K. Jemisin, and I thought that the first book that I read by N.K. Jemisin... Yes, Maya. What do you want? My cat, sorry. And the first book I thought that I would read by her would be The Fifth Season, her fantasy book, but with the cryptic clues I sent my friends and family to choose a book, the votes came in and they went with The City We Became. This is part of a duology. The second book is The World We Make, which at this point, I'm not sure if I'm going to read this because I struggled at certain points in this book. I really, really struggled. There's a lot of jumping between characters, which I do not mind. At least you go in knowing that you're going to jump between characters. But I found it that the book started to feel very episodic, which wasn't nice. Again, when I read a book, I want there to be like a natural flow that goes through the story. Even if you have time jumps within a story, the story can still flow naturally and easily. And I didn't feel this in this book. It kept feeling like we stop, something happens, something big happens, we stop, something happens, something big happens, we stop. And that's why I said it felt like it was like episodic. You can literally break this book if you want to make it into a series. Like, it's already written for you in like episode format. Like, we already know what will happen in episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, and so on. I don't think this is badly written, though. This woman is a fantastic writing characters. The amount of research that she needed to do for this plot was intense, because this plot had my mind working. This is not a book that you pick up for a quick Sunday read. Personally, my personal opinion, this is not, I would not say this is an easy read, because it takes on some serious subject matter. Not in serious subject matter as in trigger warnings, but like in mental, you have to use that mind for how the magic system works and how the evil villainous thing works. Like, you need to use some brain power to keep up with it and understand exactly how she built her magic system, which I think was very well done, very interesting, very unique, which is something that is clearly evident with her writing. The representation that you get in here was fantastic. There was some good laughs, some good one-liners she threw in here. There was some good banter. I think the character development was very great, and the relationship building between the characters, I think, was also great, although the relationship building was a little bit odd, because you think that you would get a found family vibe from this, and you kind of don't. Hearing the end, maybe a little, it's touchy, but yeah, but you understand why it's like that. It makes sense within the characters and their personalities why it isn't like that. I just didn't like how it was structured. That's my biggest criticism, was for the structure of this book. And then the other problem I also had is because I've never been to New York. I don't know a lot about New York, and I'm not a city person. I don't like big, busy, bustling cities. And I think if you like New York, if you've been to New York, and if you like big, bustling cities and the vibes they give off, then this would definitely be a book for you. I definitely want to read more by her. I definitely am excited to see what else she's bringing out. I do want to read the 5th season, because people have been praising that book so much. But yeah, I enjoyed something different. I was just a little bit disappointed, as some of things just didn't work for me at all. But I'm also trying to do spoiler free, so that people can go read what they want, or so they know what they get in. I don't know. What am I trying to say? I don't know. And the next book that I read was, again, then I went from finishing The City We Became. I decided, let's jump back into our Korean reading, and I picked up Almond by Won Pyong Son. I cannot see who was the translator for this book. I could maybe have looked it up. I could have done that, possibly. But for some reason they don't say. I don't know, maybe the translator wants to be anonymous, because it's not printed on the book anywhere. Usually they would say who is it translated by, but even in the translator's note at the end, usually the translator would sign off with their name, as the author sometimes does, as the author did in this one, but the translator didn't sign their name. So maybe the translator doesn't want to be known. Which is fine. We respect that. We respect privacy. We respect secrecy. You know, fine. But the translation was done very, very well, and I appreciated the translated note. I got a bigger appreciation for this book when I read the translator's note at the end, because the love and care that went into translating this book is commendable. I can say that is commendable. However, this book was also a little bit of a disappointment for me. I thought going into it, I'm going to get a very visceral reading experience. And the same with Love in the Big City. I thought I was going to get a very visceral experience from this book, and I just didn't get it. And I think it is because the book is so short. Again, this is a book I think I read over 2 days. No, I think more. 2-3 days, because I had to go to work, so I couldn't read, and I couldn't read after work, and then I'm tired. And then I don't want to read anymore. I'm tired after work. Um, I didn't say what the other books were about. I didn't say what the city we became about. Wow. Loving this reading wrap up, aren't we? So Almond follows a boy who turns into a man who has alexithymia, where he struggles to experience certain emotions, and that is because the almond shaped, I think the amygdala in his brain is undeveloped, so he doesn't experience emotion. And then you follow his journey of him trying to understand emotions and him trying to build friendships and relationships, and the friendship and relationships he does build during the book. And I think it was well written. I enjoyed the story. I just felt like it lacked something. It just lacked that emotional renaissance. No, resonance. It lacked the emotional renaissance that the emotional resonance that I thought I would have with it. I really thought, I was hoping this would make me cry. I was hoping I would get like an emotional story, and sitting here thinking, I'm not sure if this is written like that on purpose or if I just didn't vibe with it that much. And it could be both. It could be a me thing that I just didn't vibe with it, or it could be the way it was written was purposeful so that you don't get so emotionally attached to the characters or feel as much, or I just didn't feel as much. But I would recommend it to people. This was an interesting story. This was also a cute story. It had a few heartfelt moments in there that maybe some people cried at. I'm not sure. But it is a book I would recommend to people if you want to read something by a Korean author that is a little bit different. Also another quick read. It doesn't go that deeply into Korean culture, but it does have a few tropes that you might have seen if you've watched like K-dramas and things like that. You might see a few tropes in here that stick out. But it was a good book. I think they handled the is it, would you call it a disability of suffering with something like alexithymia? Is it a disability? I'm not sure, but the way it was handled in such a good way. It was handled with so much care, because the author said herself that one of the things that inspired her, I think, if I remember correctly, was when she had her own child. Like, if her child turned out a certain way, would she still love him or her, no matter how they turned out, no matter if they had this problem or if they were like some of the other characters in the book? That was the exploration. So it is a fast read, it is a quick read. The book goes very fast, chapters are very short, so you fly through the book. And it's a nice little adventure to go on at the end of the day. So after I finished that one, I decided, you know what? Let's get another friend to pick my book for me. So my friend and I had a little bit of fun, and we decided to go for a new release called Cruel Logic by Brian James Godawa. And I was very excited to read this book. And then I read it and I DNF'd the fuck out of it. I DNF'd it so hard, I actually wanted to go delete it from my Kindle library. It's available on Kindle if you're interested in. So, Cruel Logic, as it says, the philosophical killer. So we follow a killer who kills people, a serial killer who killed people, and then he got locked up. And then we have a university professor and one of his grad students who go to interview the killer for her thesis. And then you meet your next character, who's a Christian boy from a very Christian family, who goes to a secular university, as they like to call it, and his parents are not happy about it because it isn't a Christian university. And then we have our other character who is a black female character who is very woke. And if you cannot pick up on how stereotypical and how almost contrived those characters are, like, then clearly we've got different tastes. But that was my biggest problem in this book, is that the it was just so annoying to read because the serial killer that was written, the tropes, the serial killer was the same serial killer you see in most movies that you read about in most of the books. You had the professor and the student going to interview for the thesis, and the professor and the student are sleeping together. What a shock. And then you've got the Christian boy who goes to a non-Christian university, who meets a very woke black woman, and he's very attracted to black people and black culture and their music. And there was no in the six. I only got 60 pages into this book, but there was nothing in this book that felt new or interesting. Maybe the new and interesting stuff will come at the end. Maybe. I don't know. But I just couldn't handle it. There was like 1 or 2, 3 pages that was literally just the professor talking. And it literally felt like I was being taught a sermon, not a sermon, a lecture. Because he was giving a lecture and you were reading his lecture, and it feels like I was being lectured at. And when I'm trying to escape into a book, I don't want to be lectured at. If I'm reading what do you call it? If I'm reading non-fiction, then yes, lecture at me. I chose this, but I chose a book to escape. And now, Susan, you're lecturing at me. Don't lecture at me. Okay? And then when the Christian boy talked to the black girl, and I'm focusing specifically on the color because it's a thing in this book. It's a thing. You need to understand it's a thing because they take on like Western civilization as a subject, and wokeism, and the like white supremacy and voices that have been silent over the years. So the color thing is important to this book. That she is a black student is a thing. It's important that you know that she's a black woke student and he's a white Christian boy. It was just very frustrating to read. I just couldn't take it, and I just DNF'd the fuck out of that book. I was so excited for a little crime thriller. I was even fine that because it's a Christian book. It's a theology book, which I didn't know going into it until I like started reading the first pages. Not the introductions, but like all the forewords and the mentions and things like that. And then I discovered it's a Christian book, and I was like, ooh. But I was open to it. I was like, sure, let's give it a chance. I mean, you can write good fiction. Some of my, like, there's a book that I want to reread called Skin by Ted Decker that is about also a serial killer. I think it's a little bit, yeah, Skin, that I really want to reread because I loved it so much. And it was written by a Christian author, and it is a Christian book. And I'm not against a Christian book. Just don't, there's nothing here. Don't do it this way. Don't, because every time someone would start talking about, like, let's say they would start talking about the voices that were silenced, it felt like you were being lectured at by the the woke, now I'm hiding my hands, by the woke students. And then they go rambling and rambling on about how they were oppressed and things like that, and I'm just sitting there like, my word, could you not have approached this in a more tactful way? Because it's just like, what's the word? Like info dumping you with all these ideas and concepts and oppression, and why the white professor thinks that they should have the Western civilization course. And then there's a protest about that, and then people are not talking, and there's not communication, and that annoys the shit out of me when people can't communicate, and it was just horrible. I think I should have done a book just literally on Cruel Logic. I think I should have done that. I should have done like a ranting video on Cruel Logic. But nonetheless, luckily, I was able to put that down and say goodbye to that, and I finally got my hands on Iron Flame. I don't know. I know how to... Sorry for my squeaky chair. I don't know how to not be biased, because this is my biased opinion about the book, about Iron Flame. I enjoyed it. I loved it. It took me a week to finish, but again, I have work, so I cannot finish it every day. But it took me about a week to finish. I need to finish it quickly because my friends wanted to get on that shit. And I enjoyed it. I cannot say too much because this is the follow-up to Fourth Wing. If you don't know, where have you been? And I really, really enjoyed it. There were some parts where the book felt a little bit slower. Where I think the book maybe was a little bit too long, I would say. I think there could have been a few pages, could have been shaved off, could have been edited down. But at the end, I did enjoy it. I know people are freaking out about the ending. Apparently, some people love it, some people hate it. I was happy with the ending. I understood. If you're planning a 5-part, I think it's a 5-part book series, is the quintet? Then, yeah, shit like that needs to happen for the story to carry on and keep shit interesting. We need to keep shit interesting. Oh my gosh. My cat is having her... Okay. If you hear crashing down, she's fine, I promise. If you hear like a cat crashing down, like, I promise you she's fine. She is a wild animal. But back to Iron Flame. So, loved it, enjoyed it. You need those gut punches. I cried a little bit. I cried 2 or 3 times. Oh, 2 or 3 times I almost cried. And by the end I did cry. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. If you didn't enjoy it, that's okay. That's fine. If you love the books that I read, that's okay. That's fine. If you didn't enjoy the books that I read, that's okay. That's fine. As long as we all just enjoy reading for the sake of reading. We're here to explore. I wish I could say more about Iron Flame, but that would be spoilers. But yes, we are back with Violet. We are back with Xaden. We are back with their relationship. We are back with the Fourth Wing. And then we follow along their journey into whatever happens in the second book, which again, I cannot say much. But yes, I have been enjoying myself with Iron Flame. I'm happy I was able to finish it. I'm a little bit sad because now I have to wait for the third book to come out. But to save myself, to keep myself busy, I did finish my... I'm fine. I'm fine. I promise. I'm fine. So, I did finish my December TBR. So, it is a little bit early. And I'm starting my December TBR a little bit early. But I am currently busy with If We Were Villains. And I'm enjoying it thoroughly. So, luckily, I have many, many books to keep me company until the next book in the Empyrean series releases. But I hope you enjoyed my November wrap-up. I almost said December wrap-up. My November wrap-up. Please leave your comments down below. What did you think? What did you feel? What are you reading? What are you recommending I read? I'm very excited for my December TBR. And I hope you have a wonderful day, wonderful life, wonderful whatever you are doing. Don't let fear interfere with your happiness. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Groete, liefde, vrede, vreugde, geluk, blijdskap, liefde. Allemaal dingetjies vir julle. Until next time. Bye-bye.